Welcome to episode 6 of Triple Sigma with Alex Feinberg. Today we have a very special guest. The man has made and lost more money than 100 men can expect to make and lose in a lifetime. Former Bitcoin exchange founder, Michael Dunworth. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So for our guests who are not familiar with the Michael Dunworth genesis, would you mind giving everyone a quick snippet on how you got to be where you are in life? What turned you on to Bitcoin? How you're able to have a smile on your face going through the roller coaster of a ride that you've been on for, frankly, the last decade?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, Alex. It's good to see you. So my background is I'm Australian, so born and raised Sydney, Australia. I moved to San Francisco in 2013 to start sort of actors go to Hollywood, nerds go to San Francisco. Like that's the kind of the place where you go to make it on the big stage, so to speak. And so I quit my job in finance. I was working in finance in Sydney, a software company, and moved over to San Francisco, sort of one-way ticket, YOLO, let's try and make it. Met my co-founder there. I was living in a hacker house, which is basically like an orphanage with Wi-Fi, for lack of a better term. And so from there, I went on to basically having as much sort of surroundings from entrepreneurship as possible. And I met my co-founder there. We started a company, and it ended up that we were sort of like an automatic checkout. So at the time you couldn't have one-click checkout. So you had, now you got Amazon and Apple Pay and all that stuff. But 10 years ago, there wasn't that. And so we added Bitcoin as a payment method, and we had a huge amount of basically people start getting excited about being able to spend your Bitcoins at lots of places. And then the natural extension from that, once we allowed people to spend their Bitcoins, we started offering them wallets and exchange services. And so our idea was that actually it wouldn't be good for us to be another competing exchange. It would be better for us to actually provide all the infrastructure to everyone that we went through. To build an exchange in America is extremely challenging. You need a huge amount of banking partnerships. You need a huge amount of AML and KYC compliance sort of obligations that you got to meet and licenses. So anyway, we did all that and we said, well, we're not going to hold it ourselves. We're going to try and give this infrastructure to many. And so we got to work with some of the best companies that you know now. Yes, some of them have gone on to IPO. Some of them are now billion dollar exchanges. But it's been a pleasure being kind of like helping teams go from, their first 1,000 or 10,000 users. And that's what Wire did. We provided the infrastructure for people to start their own exchanges and brokerages. And we went on to have, over 1 million users, $20 billion in processing volume, 2,500 companies built on top of us. Some of those are now, like I said, they've IPO'd recently or they're about to IPO. So it's just been exciting. Like, I feel like we've gotten to be on the ground floor for 10 years almost, up until I stepped away from the CEO role, which was in, the end of 2020 or sort of mid-COVID. And yeah, my co-founder took over, and yeah, we had a tremendous journey. Now, the tremendous journey ended up actually where we were selling the company for $1.5 billion, and it was actually the largest transaction in history for this industry. Anyway, so Ukraine war started. SBF fleeced everyone from their money on the exchange on FTX. So everyone basically ran out of money, or their assets were frozen in FTX or something. Long story short, the transaction ended up falling through and, we parted ways with that company. And then my co-founder went on to sort of find it a new home and, the story goes on and now you're on to the next thing, So you build a company, you get over 100 employees, get over, 150 million in revenue. And then these things happen though. But, you learn as an entrepreneur when, really good things come to you. They're never done until they're done. Like, it's not done until it's done. And you learn that as an entrepreneur, you learn things like, it's, this investor said yes. And it's like, well, let's just wait until their money's in the bank first. And, and so you learn to manage your expectations really, really well as an entrepreneur. So I'd always have the saying, let's plan for the worst, hope for the best. And that doesn't mean yeah.
So how is the planning going when you were agreed to being acquired for $1.5 billion, but you're planning for the worst, hoping for the best? What was going on in your mind?
I was planning for it to fall through.
Oh, you
That's
were?
exactly what I was planning. Yeah, me personally. Now, I wasn't on the board anymore and I wasn't the CEO anymore. So I was just sort of a voice in the crowd, so to speak. Obviously, I still got a voice and I got to talk to the board and stuff like that. But yeah, I was apprehensive at the beginning. Like I was just like, these things, the reason I was more apprehensive, less to do with the company acquiring it, just sort of the mechanics of the market. Like if you've got 12 months runway or 10 months runway as a company, and you have to spend 6 or 7 of that totally focused on basically this acquisition, it means that you're very distracted. And so what that can do is can chew up a lot of your runway because your headspace is outside of product or tech and it's on fundraising or acquisitions. And so, and that's the life cycle of companies. And, basically we have a very volatile market that we're in, Bitcoin and crypto, so to speak, they have 4-year cycles, right? You're very familiar with that. They've got the hype for a year and then they go down for 3 and then they come back. Now, your goal is to basically be positioned very well for when the hype cycle comes, because that's like farmers making hay when the sun shines. They plant their crops during the bear market and then they harvest them all in 1 year. And that's kind of what crypto companies do. They don't work on a quarterly basis. They work on a halving basis because that's when their most material metrics are developed. And yeah, we were just, unfortunately caught in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong deal. And that happens. And it's a shame for the team, obviously, because there could have been a really cool payday for everyone. And that's the goal as a CEO. Like you want to build a great product with a great team, have your customers rewarded with a great product and have your team compensated for their hard effort with obviously, some financial benefit. But yeah, this is just part of the market turbulence. These things happen, but I think it's important that when they do happen, you've got your plan B ready, whatever that is. Like you've got to expect things to go badly so that you always have redundancy. And that's what I think is really, really important, especially in volatile markets, is redundancy. And so you learn that as well in building a crypto exchange or anything like that, because banking partners and ID verification partners and all that, your infrastructure relies on tying so many things together for compliance, for banking, for regulatory stuff, that you need lots of these things as redundancy. So we might have 5 banking partners. We might have 5 ID verifiers. We might have 5 payment processors. And that's all to make sure that the lights always stay on. It's like a restaurant having 3 different chefs in case one of them gets sick. Or, an understudy in a performance or a play. They're the actor's understudy for the lead will be the guy that goes on if the actor gets, starts vomiting 10 minutes before they've got to go into the show. So you always want to have these redundancies. And, when you take away, obviously, like it sounds bad, right? Like, 1.5 billion and then you didn't make it. It's like, oh my God. That is definitely, obviously, it's a bummer, right? Financially, that's a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. You get up and keep going and you've got Bitcoin and you keep focusing on Bitcoin and stuff like that with these hyper aggressive growing assets. You're still financially, you can see a path to victory, let's say, or freedom. But one of the things that people sort of miss is that, yes, you miss out on a payday, but every single person in the team, and including myself, we got to be at the beginning, basically, of this whole industry. And that's really powerful because you get to watch and experience so much from the roots and the sort of the evolution or the start of the evolution of where everything is now. It all started back then. And so you're sort of not paid in dollars, you're paid in knowledge in a way. And like there's no amount of money that anyone could basically pay to have this much knowledge. Like it's worth more than $1 billion because if you've been in the industry for 10 years and this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and you started when the industry was, you started 10 years ago and the industry started 12 years ago, that's a lot of, you get most of the meat on the bone for how the industry started and flourished and grew. Now, yes, you're not there at day 0, sure, but through the majority of the growth and the way that it grew and the problems that we were solving through, trying to make Bitcoin and crypto a thing, so there's a lot of regulatory red tape, a lot of banking issues, and all the issues that we went through, we're now seeing on the other side with the Trump administration, probably cutting a lot of those. So the SEC basically swinging the hammer at anyone that does anything, that's gone. So now people can list tokens, they can make tokens and stuff like that. Good or bad, I'm not there to argue that. I'm just saying the confidence that an entrepreneur now has, that they're not looking over their eye, one eye over their shoulder kind of thing, sleeping with one eye open. Because anyone that was doing token sales or anything like that, or even dealing with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, you needed so much regulation, there was so much red tape, and every founder was just paranoid that they were going to get, killed or whatever. Like, they have the hammer swung at them, because you see all these people like getting sued and going to jail, and so you're like, what the fuck's going on? I just want to build cool shit, dude. Like, I'm not trying to piss anyone off. I'm trying to make like this thing a thing. And so you learn a lot on the journey. So yes, you miss out on these sort of financial opportunities, but hopefully being in the space long enough, you've been able to accumulate some of this asset over time. So whether you're not getting paid in a big payout from selling your company or your stock in the company, hopefully you were drinking the Kool-Aid while you were at the company. So, you bought your Bitcoins at, $40 or $50 or whenever we started. That's how much they were. And hopefully you got a chance to accumulate along the way, which many people would have, I've assumed, because it was a pretty big, the culture was pretty, oh yeah, this is cool. So I'm assuming that most of the team got some and, along the way, and they're not, they're not, maybe not retired, but they're helping accumulate wealth basically over their journey.
So you have an amazing way of reframing something that a lot of people could view as an extreme negative and frankly pay mental rent on it, looking back and say, oh, I could have had this much money and I don't have it. Is that something that you've consciously worked on, or is that something that's sort of innate to you where, you just say, well, I didn't get everything that I could have gotten, but when do you get everything that you could have gotten? And I got a lot anyway. So if you told me 10 years ago that I'd have what I have, both in terms of knowledge and financial gain, I'd take that deal 10 times out of 10. Is it something that you've worked on, or is it more innate to you?
No, I reckon it's pretty kind of like, I've just grown up with heaps of positivity, like literally. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but like, and people call me so stupid for this, but I'm like, wait, inflation's really fucking high right now. Positivity's free. Like, that's right in my price range. Like, when you go to buy shit, everything's expensive. Positivity's free. So I may as well keep that, because positive energy is going to, quite literally at a mechanical physics level, will attract more positive particles. Now, however they're manifested, I don't know. That's not my job. But I just know I may as well find a silver lining in everything. Because if you find a silver lining in everything, it's sort of like saying you get to stay on the same trajectory. So let's say you go to do something and you've got a series of steps ahead and you're walking this path and something bad happens. You're like, oh, you don't want to change path. You're like, no, this is still the way though. There's still, we can find something from this bad moment that's relevant to our journey and keep going on this journey. Doesn't mean it's a blocker. It means we've learnt new knowledge along the way. And a lot of these scientist cats are like that, where they're like, I never figured out how to do it. I figured out 1,700 wrong ways to not do it. And it's kind of like that. When you make all these errors, you get to put them in your tool belt and be like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I didn't get it right the first time, but I learned and I got to take something away from it. So you take away a win every time. Now, it might not be the win, but the win, like the big major outcome, will give you a bad emotional response if you don't get your way, because you've mismanaged your expectations. Like in a movie, when there's a horror movie and the guy jumps out to scare you, you get scared because you didn't know it was coming. Your expectations were misaligned with where the movie was going. And so that creates a big, because you were waiting for nothing. You weren't anticipating it. And so if you start anticipating it, like, oh, I've seen this bit before in the scary movie, it doesn't scare you as much because you're waiting for it, right? You might get a jump, but you're not going to be, ah. And that's kind of like what entrepreneurship is like. If you plan and you think, oh, no, it's all going to go sweet, and no, they're not going to fuck me over. This is going to be fine. That's going to be sweet. Look, that's the happy part, sure. But what if one of those links break? We want 1,000 different possible paths to our goal. And so a lot of people say the name, like when playing the game, right? Let's call this the game. A lot of people say, oh, play to win. Yeah, I get that. Playing to win's good, but it only shows you one path to victory. As where if you play to solve, means you understand the entirety of the game. And so you can go, okay, we're here. If the game works this way, then that's the path we need to take to get to our goal. So it's not crafting one path, it's understanding all the little levers and mechanics in the system to say, well, even if we get straight off our North Star path, our happy path, we can still find our way back because we understand all the different mechanics it's like understanding a battlefield and where all the mines are. And, you might not be able to go in a straight line, but you go, okay, well, we know if we zigzag through here, we can dodge these bullets and make it smoothly across the path. But I do think I used to get called like every time like there was something bad happen, like, right? The company, it was so funny. And this, I wouldn't do it on purpose. I'd actually just do it naturally. But like, okay, so let's say 2 days before our funding round's meant to close, all the investors pull out. We've had things like that happen. So funny. And then you go in, you've got like an all hands meeting with the team, and they're like, hey, are we getting paid tomorrow? And not literally, but they're kind of like, and I'm like, okay, guys, all the investors actually pulled out, so the round's not going ahead. And everyone's like, oh, I'm like, no, but this is actually a good thing. Here's why. I'm that guy where I'm like, no, there's still a good thing to come from this. But I think more people need to be like that, because you get so much free alpha from yourself if you are like that, because you'll just keep going, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm like, you bulldoze through these walls. And a lot of people, I feel like they keep going further if they didn't mismanage their own expectations along the way. Because the reason why you get bummed out and down and out and da-da-da is because you had some big moment that went a very different way to how you were anticipating. So it doesn't mean just anticipate for everything to suck and you'll never get let down. It doesn't really mean that. It means more like being very diligent about, when you hit a problem, being like, well, is this really a problem, or is there some positive we can take away from this? It's like someone, like, let's say if you have the best engineer on your team quit, you'd be like, oh fuck, we're screwed. It'd be like, well, why did he quit? And he goes, well, actually he quit because the office has got fucking lead paint on it and he's dying and he's got a problem. We're like, whoa, shit, well, there's a benefit. We didn't know that, but now we know we can fix that so we don't lose an engineer. So it's always like, there's always room for improvement. And usually when something bad happens, it's a chance to go, oh, how did we drop the ball there? So if you take maximum accountability, like where you're like, everything that's going wrong is my fault, is a direct result of my leadership or my fault. Like, as a company CEO, the fish rots from the head. So if you're ever not getting anything that you need done at the company, don't look at your engineering team, don't look at your look at the man in the mirror. And I had to look at the man in the mirror a lot, because I was always like, well, they're not doing that, or that's not getting done. No. You're the problem. They're talking to me, by the way. This guy, it's good. But that's a learning curve, right? You're never born as a CEO. You just accidentally fall into it. Like, out of me and my co-founder, he was COO because he was better operationally and with paperwork and all that shit. And I was CEO, but it wasn't like, hey, you be CEO because you're the more experienced one. So you figure it out, right? And I think it's less about having all the answers and more about showing that you're willing to find answers, right? Because if I'm learning from someone, or if I'm employed by someone and my boss is always head in the sand and he's like, no, everyone's wrong but me, I'd be like, oh, this guy's not taking any feedback. I might be getting cock-blocked here for my whole career because this dude doesn't want to learn anything new. And so, but if you are quite open about your faults, hey guys, yeah, we fully fucked up on that one. That was a total misread or whatever. You can help give confidence to people when they know that when you fuck up. Kind of thing, like, oh, I dropped the ball. Yeah, but he knows he dropped the ball and he'll fix it. He's like that. And that's a better person to have on your team than the guy that's never wrong. No, you guys are all, it's your fault. No, I did my part. It's like, whatever. Okay, you're exhausting. But I think as well, like, one of the things we did with the team was, as we started growing and scaling to, because it was literally me and Yanni sleeping in our office on bunk beds. Like, there wasn't some big office. It was literally like the movies, bunk beds, fucking PlayStations, empty beer bottles, and that's the origins almost. But as you grow, we grew from 5 people to 50 people in about 2.5 years or 2 years or something. And when we got to 50 people, not much had changed, like administratively or stuff. So we hired professional coaches, or business coaches or whatever, to come in and help us be leadership coaches, they were called, for the CTO, the CEO, and the COO. So me, my co-founder, and our CTO, the 3 kind of leaders at the company. And so basically I brought in these leadership experts, and I was like, guys, Sam, Yanni, and I, we're not Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, but we are trying our best, and we've gotten the company from, no revenue to 25 million in revenue. But for us to get it to 200 million in revenue, we've got to grow as individuals. And so these coaches are here to help us not fuck up and help us dodge bullets. So the team, they know we suck. Not suck, but we're just like, we're not Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. But they know, oh, that's cool. we support them. They're trying hard to be better for us. Do you know what I mean? And it's about like making these investments, but you got to know what you don't know. And like, you got to
Yeah.
be willing to know what you don't know. And a lot of people, they don't want to look on that side of their knowledge path. They don't want to go, oh, what don't I know? Dude, fill your cup up with all the shit you don't know, because every time you find out something you do know, it will illuminate something that you do know. Just like if I've got to walk down a path and I've got to go left or right and I don't know what the right answer is. Well, the best decision is to make the correct answer. The second best is to make the wrong answer. Because if I go down the wrong path, it's got a dead end. And it goes, sorry, dude, it was the other one. I go, oh, it was the other one. But if you make no decision, just standing there, you'll never get more information. So indecision is usually the killer out of everything. And what happens is a lot of people get sort of paralysis around big problems when big problems hit the company, whether it's a team leaving, hacks, whatever it is. And you get this analysis paralysis where you're frozen because the moment is so big and you don't know what to do. But you just got to keep going. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's just that keep going, just chipping away brick by brick. There's no rocket science to it. It's just iteration with new information.
I almost think that the mindset that you're taking to being a chief executive is optimized for continuing to stay on track and continuing to stay in the race. So
Yes.
much so that, I tell a lot of people from rookie to advanced that a lot of success is figuring out a way to stay in the game until you get lucky. And I think the mindset that you are taking, I don't know if you ever heard me say that, but, I certainly didn't coach you 8 years ago when you were, when you started to have these traits and spread them throughout the wider organization. But your mindset and your approach, whether you realized it at the time or not, is optimized for people wanting to just continue to fight another day. It's almost like you're taking several bets, each of which have a low probability for extreme success, but in aggregate, one of them, is likely to succeed. And then you just have to be confident enough and inspire enough confidence around you to where people will continue to work day after day after day when the future is uncertain, but they're still going to be happy whether they win or they lose because they're always getting something from their effort. And so it's very different from how you might be taught in school, because school has a correct answer. Tests have correct answers, and students are tested on information that they can read in books. And so that answer that's in the book is the correct one. But in real life is not optimized for correct answers. Real life is optimized for staying in the game until you get lucky. And there's so many people who try to just be so precise and try to get their forecasting exactly accurate, knowing that their forecast is never going to be exactly accurate, and probably being well aware that there's other entrepreneurs out there who may not be as gifted as them intellectually, but their mindset is oriented around recovering from failure and continuing to fight another day. And it's almost like I couldn't imagine a better mindset to both fight another day and inspire your troops to fight another day than exactly what you've laid out over the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree, especially in an industry that doesn't know what it is yet, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the most important things I think we did at the company was we were always, firstly, it was always, we all work for the logo. So whether you're the CEO, and this might sort of speak to what you're saying, which is if everyone's working for the logo, no one's working for themselves. I'm the CEO, I'm just a tool in the, I'm a pawn in the machine too, but we always do what's best for the logo. And I think that that positive approach and kind of making it beyond ourselves really helped. It also helps that, with ambiguity, you've got to acknowledge the ambiguity, right? I can't stand there in front of my team and say, guys, I know exactly what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. And it's like, that's not really fair or honest. And so what we did actually, we raised around in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and, onwards or whatever. But every round, the investors would always come back to me with one problem. You don't have a vision. What's the vision? And I was like, the vision will not get stated, because once you state it, that's got to be important to the company. I can't just say, oh, the vision this week is that, and next week it's that, and next week, because then it doesn't mean anything to anyone. So I would always say to the team, we don't have a vision right now. This is survival and observation, because that was the case. We're an infrastructure provider. We don't know where it's going to go. So I can't bet on being like, oh, no, we're not going to do an exchange. We're going to do a limit order brokerage. Like, I've got no clue where it's going to go. And neither, it's intellectually dishonest to think I do. And so what we would watch is, because so many companies would be using our stuff, we'd see all these companies that had their grand visions laid out, and they're like, oh, this is our vision and our vision and our vision. And everyone seems so on track. And investors used to call this out to us specifically, where they're like, everyone else has a vision, but you guys, do you think that's, making the team unstable and stuff? And I said, well, the vision is to find a vision, but we can't say that I can't tell my team with intellectual honesty, hey guys, this is the vision. Because if I sell you and hire you as a guru and like you're my CTO or something, I'm trying to hire you, I say, this is the vision. He might be leaving Netflix for 500,000 a year, and he's got 2 kids at home, and I give him some bullshit vision that's going to change in a month. By the time he's left Netflix and starting here, the vision's changed. I can't fuck people's careers like that. I can't fuck around with that, And so it's important for us and for investors and for our team. So if we've said we don't have a vision the whole time, and then one day, 5.5 years later, I bring everyone into the room and I go, guys, this is the vision. Now that means something, because we've never had it. And the only time we were going to have it was when it mattered. And that's what did happen in 2018, or the end of 2018. So we started in 2013. By the end of 2018 or the start of 2019, we had cemented what our vision was. And that was basically to make people able to go from zero to servicing customers in 6 hours, not 6 months. I've forgotten the pitch, the one-liner, but basically it was like, take your product from dev to production in 6 hours, not 6 months, because it took so much time, licensing, compliance, ID, and all these services that people would have to do to start an exchange or a brokerage or anything to service US customers. And so we basically wrapped it all in an API, gave developers keys and said, yeah, go for your life. Use all our endpoints, process payments, verify IDs, convert currencies, pay out to bank accounts. The world is your oyster. But yeah, I think one of the things as well, by the way, in a leadership position, if you actually are building a company that because you want to build something good, you shouldn't worry. A lot of people want to become a CEO just to say they're a CEO. That's fine. I get it. There's some vanity thing to it, sure. But if you're actually building a company with purpose, you as the CEO and as any leadership member, you should be thinking of it like a big machine or like a Lego set, where your company's operating like a Lego set. There needs to be a manual. If I went and bought Lego and I go buy the box and it's got the big castle on the front, I go, oh my God, mad. That's awesome. But it comes with all the pieces. If it came with no instruction manual, I wouldn't fucking buy it, because I can't build it, because I don't know where the pieces go. A company is like that. So every person, you want to know how they do their job and how the machine works. If you've got 100 employees, I need 100 job sort of processes. And so the more processes you have, the more persistence you can assure, for the company. If I've got lots of processes around how I do my job as CEO, and I fall off the wagon, I get hit by a car and die, at least there's a manual on how to run wire. Do you know what I mean? Like here's my day-to-day of shit I need to do. Now, a lot of people are reluctant to do that because they go, oh, that means I'm replaceable. Fucking oath you are. We all should be in the best possible, including the CEO, because the faster you can be replaceable, the more certainty you give the company's future. Because I've
actually used that exact analogy where when I first started working in Silicon Valley, my job was at Google. And I probably learned more about HR than any other department, despite the fact that I never worked in HR, just from interfacing with them. And what became apparent to me was that all large companies structure their workforce like Legoland because it's safer and it's cheaper. Like if you're building a house, you want to be able to use as many stock components as possible. When you start using custom components, that's when you have the expenses rack up very, very quickly.
Custom components means custom maintenance, means custom repairs. And that's with code, the same thing. Oh, Jimmy wrote that. Jimmy's not here anymore. No one can understand his code. Oh, well, it worked. That is 100% agree. 100% agree.
Right. And so when executives are building companies, the more mechanistically you can build the company, the safer it will be. But the challenging thing that it sounds like you figured out is how do you bridge the gap between mechanistically building the company, but also having the employees not feel like cogs in a machine?
Yeah. I think the way that we did it was um, we all, there wasn't any sort of silver bullet to it. It was more just like, let's all do this for our own sanity's sake. Like, hey, if you're not here, we want to be able to do your work while you're away instead of pestering you while you've got a day off. Like, I don't want to do that. If you've got a day off, that should be your day off. If you've done all your work, go to the beach. Like, I don't want you here because I need your headspace as good as possible. So I don't want to be pestering you after hours. I want that to be time for you to recharge. You should be on the battery, go out, get drunk, whatever it is you do to fill your cup between now and when you come back to work, do it. But I don't want to be pestering you. And so I think it started with that. Also, one of the most important things that people never talk about with making your company very machine or mechanistic or mechanical, let's say, is if I'm going to acquire a company and I go, let's say there's two companies, they both make 100 million revenue, they've both got the exact same expenses. One has documents on how to do everyone's jobs and how everything kind of integrates into our system. The other doesn't. So if I'm trying to buy two companies, the one without an instruction manual, if I pay 200 million, let's say I pay 200 million for both of them, right? And my goal, I'm buying these companies in order to add value to my present company. So I pay 200 mil for both companies. The one without instruction manuals, like the Lego set with no instructions, we can get there to the box, like to the picture that's on the box without the instructions, but it's fucking hard. We don't know all the pieces and how to assemble them. So it's going to take us from zero to adopting it or making it correctly, integrating it much harder. Because if your company's got no processes, no instruction manual, no way how to run it, and all the people are leaving because you've acquired them, then you need to know how to get value from the company you're buying because they might make heaps of revenue, but it's not worth buying if you can't integrate it into your product. So if it takes 2 years to integrate because there's no instructions or no processes, that's a lot different to if I buy a company that's got heaps of processes. They become much easier to acquire if you are much easier to understand how everything works. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And so that's one of the big things was as we were prepping for different sort of, let's say, contingency plans, raising, selling, or whatever it is, or raising, selling, or whatever, you basically want to be as organized for both parties, right? Like, like let's say you're going to a bar and you want to meet someone, you're not going in track pants and, a t-shirt. You're going to go dress nice to present yourself well to appeal to the audience who are looking for people that have also made an effort to find someone or whatever it is. Like you're trying to be attractive. So to be the most attractive company to a potential buyer is organization. How organized are you? Okay, great, beautiful. This is how that works. This is these are the key people and who they are. Every single thing is dotted and crossed, and there's an instruction manual that blind Freddy could use to drive the ship. That is value. And so when you are going to get acquired by a company in any capacity, you've got two things to increase your valuation. One or three, let's say three levers, but one is to grow your revenue. That's the hardest because it's outside of your scope. You don't get to choose that. You can help grow it, but you can't choose to grow it. Expenses, you get to cut as much as you want or as little as you want. But processes are also the biggest one that's going to add the most value. So if I've got a company that's got more revenue than mine, but no processes, I can still get paid more for my company if it adds value to the big guy and they can get going straight away. So my company might have 30 million in revenue, but if, let's say I got bought by Square, they can turn that into 300 million overnight with their systems. Then that's great. They'll pay for it. They'll pay 300. But if they buy a company that's got 100 million in revenue, but it's going to take them 3 years to figure out how to make money from them, then that's going to be a much uglier acquisition for them. So revenue is one lever. Processes is a massive lever because it helps people extract the value. And a lot of people don't do that because they're paranoid that people are going to steal their lunch, for lack of a better term.
So which processes did you and I'm saying this the way you would say it rather than an American, which processes would
Yeah.
you did you overlook when you were starting out that in retrospect you said, you know what? I should have put a little bit more emphasis on HR. I should have put a little bit
Oh,
more
I think
emphasis.
no, I think look, retrospectively, there's everything you'd fix. Like you'd change a million things, but also at the same time you'd change nothing because the journey was so good. Um, but I would say product. That would be the biggest one because it kind of organically went from a relationship between, just product and engineering talking and sort of spitballing and having beers and ideas kind of thing in like, kind of like the everyone sitting around having beers in the boardroom, eating lollies and just shooting the shit, like that creative kind of zesty moment or whatever you want to call it. But as you grow, you keep adding people, but you don't formalize that process per se. And that's one of the ones where I think there was a big breakdown because as you start scaling engineering, there's not as much osmosis. And osmosis means sort of, when everyone's sitting in the same room, smashing a beer together or, on the whiteboard, and you got 6 people jamming in the one room. Everyone doesn't know the specifics, maybe, but they all get it. We all saw the same movie. We might have had a different interpretation, but we all sort of saw the same movie, saw what the characters were like, yada, yada. Now, as you grow, that magic gets fragmented. And so that's when that fragments, not everyone is on the same page because not everyone was in the same product meetings and so to so. So you find that like mental alignment disconnects, drifts off slowly, just gradually. And that's probably what we didn't catch was that organic alignment needs to actually be formalized. So what we did was being really crystal clear on North Stars. So North Star for the company. Guys, if everyone gets shot this year and all our customers leave us, but we still get this North Star, that's a win. And that was sort of what we would try and do is make these North Stars the kind of the root dependency of everything, because if we got nothing else done the whole year, just that, then that's a win. And we try and work backwards from that. The same thing with quarterly engineering. If you get nothing done, everyone goes to the beach, has a million beers, whatever, no dramas, go to Vegas for 6 months, whatever it is. But by the end of the quarter, this must be done. However it is, it takes 1 week, no dramas, go to the beach, enjoy, don't talk to me, don't want to hear from you until Q2. But that secular focus is really important. I'll tell you why. It's not just important from a company and execution, but it's important to grow the alignment across the teams because now, I'm an engineer. I'm one of 18 engineers, but I wasn't in the product meeting. Yeah, but this is our North Star. Why is that our North Star? Oh, because that's the company North Star. Oh, I know my part now. I know where I'm adding value because I know how much this North Star means, which means I know how much I mean to this North Star. Does that make sense? And that becomes
Yeah.
quite empowering. But also, if you never have goals, it means you can't ever formally celebrate. And that partitioning in our brain mentally, if I'm just an engineer, I just keep doing task, 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 task. And then it's just the next thing. It's almost like a sweatshop of just busy work. But if I'm like, oh no, I'm on the team, this is our North Star. And then after that, we're going for pizzas and getting drunk or whatever we do and going bowling when we hit that. And that's a big high five to everyone. And you feel very part of something. That's really important. And I know it sounds so basic, but if you're an engineer and you just say, oh, we do 2 week sprints, and everyone just keeps adding, oh, this bug needs to be fixed, and that's the sprint for the dev, that's not exciting. That's not mentally exciting. It's not emotionally exciting. That's just busy work. And you're just filling someone's plate up in almost like a rudderless way. And they feel that rudderlessness as well. If I'm just getting odd jobs all the time, but I'm not ever part of, hey, we're trying to build an arc, and here I need you to build, the deck for me. They don't feel that sense of ownership and empowerment. And I think it's better to give more to people, like trust them more, be like, yeah, dude, I'm not going to fucking micromanage you. That's what I need done. You're a grown person. Get it done how you would. You're smart and talented. And that autonomy, I think, is really important. But you've got to have the goal of the North Star before you do that so that the autonomy is put to good use, because you don't want someone working really hard on something that isn't going to go to market, because then they're going to be demotivated because they're like, I busted my ass for this and it didn't even get to production. Why am I going to bust my ass for the next thing that might not get to production? Do you know what I mean?
How do you square the fact that you said the company didn't have a vision,
Yeah.
but the employees need a North Star. So
Yeah.
how did you bridge that gap for the first 4 or 5
At the
years?
time, the North Stars were Series A and Series B. So seed round was the first North Star. Series A was our second one, and Series B was our third one. And after Series B, then we did a vision, and the vision became specific metrics, which was at the time it was something like percentage of brokerages or smart contract platforms that were using Wire as their primary on ramp. That was our North Star that we ended up with. And we ended up with like 78% coverage or 80% coverage in both. Like we were the number one on ramp by light years. Coinbase couldn't do it. Circle didn't do it. Then came out all the competitors like, Transact, that was an aggregator. MoonPay, they were pretty aggressive on the retail side, but not the infrastructure side. And I think we left a really big hole in the market, to be honest. Like right now, there's still companies that come. Oh, sorry. When we left, a new company came in called Ramp, and they got bought by Stripe for $1 billion, I think. And that ended up being the largest acquisition in crypto. But yeah, so what do you do with the North Star? The North Star is, guys, we don't have a North Star. We just want to get to Series A. Why do we not have a North Star? Guys, because we're in a highly confusing, new, fresh industry. We don't want to add any more risk than we need. And right now, we don't know where it's going, but we know that we are in a very important place to go forward from here. And so I think everyone is okay with no North Star, so long as they know that there's no North Star for a reason. And then it's up to them to determine, well, no, I think the industry is mature enough. There should be a North Star. I'm out of here. This is a directionless company. And you have people leave. And we had lots of people leave. And most of the times, if people left, because we did have someone leave, like our company, we were changing directions. And one of the marketing team or the head of marketing basically wasn't set up for success because their abilities were applied in the previous sort of focus of the company. And so we had to let that person go. But that was nothing to their fault. And we said that. And, we're first to say, give great recommendations, find them a home at, whether it's Coinbase, okay, I don't know, but like give good recommendations if they're good actors and they left on our terms. So there's times where we've had to let people go. So we were raising a round and we had to let 14 people go in one day. Dude, that's got to be one of the worst days on earth. All face to face, like a fucking meat grinder. You go out, there's a boardroom, 3 of us in the boardroom, me, my co-founder, and the head of HR. And then we got to go out to this big office where everyone can see us. It's a big open floor plan and have to call someone's name. And it was like being sentenced to death or something. And we'd take turns in having to call someone. It was hard. It was so hard. But one of the silver linings to that is, I sent an email to all the people that I had to let go. And I said, look, I understand this sucks. And I genuinely do. But I try to make it clear this is not their problem. This is the company's got too much expenses and these are the white people we have to cut. But they are all shareholders. So we gave them the option to buy your shares whenever you want. So it wasn't like, hey, I know you just lost your job. By the way, you got 30 days to figure out whether you want to buy your shares. Which happens when you leave a company. There's a period where you can buy up the shares or whatever. And people either didn't have money or they needed more time to think. And I was like, yeah, dude, I'll buy them for you. Just pay me back later. Like shit like that. We're trying to make it doable for everyone. Like not trying to be like, yeah, and fuck yeah, and you're not getting your stock either. No, we're not about that. We're all a team. Everyone woke up at fucking 6 o'clock to be there. Everyone worked way too many hours. They sacrificed family time and stuff. They need to be acknowledged for that. And I think even letting them go, I send them an email saying basically, you're now my boss. You are a shareholder of the company. I report to you. And if I report to the shareholders, the reason why you're now a shareholder, not employees, because my job to all shareholders is to make sure the company's longevity is assured. And if that means reducing expenses, then that's so be it. So it's sort of like saying, hey, you're not going to get paid anymore your 150K this year, but the stock that's worth 50K, I'm going to try and make it worth 500K for you in the process of this. And that's my focus as a CEO. And you can't win them all, unfortunately, but yeah, you just got to try and do the right thing, even in the hard times, whether that means even giving references to these people that you had to let go. Yeah, man, we had to let them go, but they were an honest cat. They showed up every time. They were hardworking. we as a company made a pivot that meant we couldn't afford to keep them. But, you know, if you've got a project like X, Y, or Z, that person's fantastic for it. And, you know, that's the best we can make out of a bad situation. We can't give them their job back because, you know, we can't afford it. So the best thing we can do is try and encourage them and be very, very supportive of their new path and their new journey. So, yeah.
It seems like your executive style is competitive but not cutthroat. And
No,
one thing,
never cutthroat, ever.
and one thing I'm wondering is, do you think that has to do with growing up in Australia? Do you think it has to do with your family? Because I think
Yes, 100%,
yeah,
100%,
tell me about that.
100%. My dad's like that. I think my dad's like the best, like one of the best entrepreneurs ever, but he wouldn't call himself that. He's just it's street smarts, right? Like cutthroat is like just that's for a different era. Now is not. Cutthroat doesn't work. Oh, yeah, cutthroat. Cool. You leave a bad taste in this person's mouth. Now that person has, you know, gotten the shits. They've gone and started a competitor. Or they've gone to a competitor. Like it's just the world is there's too much opportunity to be cutthroat like that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that works. Now you're talking to someone that doesn't have a company anymore. So maybe I'm not cutthroat enough. But I would say there is a fine balance between, you know, that cutthroat mentality. I don't think works in our industry specifically because in payments, there's so much regulation stuff that it requires a lot of expertise in multiple areas, identity verification, payment processing and anti-money laundering, and then obviously security for crypto and stuff like that. So you end up with payments, it's very incestuous and there's a lot of co-opetition, which means you might be the head of a payment company and I'm the head of a payment company, but we use your identity verification because it's really good and you use our bank payouts because we've got better coverage or something like that. But when you unpack everything from all these payment companies, everyone's banging each other. Like everyone's cross-service using all the time to make everyone look like they've got every service, but they actually don't. That is actually white labeled of this, and this is white labeled of that. Great example, just out of the box. Stripe, a white label of Wells Fargo. That's it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know. And that's the thing. Like everyone is a white label of something. And so I just think in our industry, it's in that it is so everyone helping each other in a way. Obviously, people are competitive, but no one's sort of trying to fuck each other out of business because it's just too many cross dependencies. Different, you know, you might be with the same banking partners as us. You might have the same ID verifiers as us. And all these things, everyone in payments is trying to introduce each other to service providers because everyone you need so many different vendors for different shit. Everyone's trying to figure it out. So, yeah, it's like, it's a lot, but I just don't think there was ever too much value in the bridge burning approach of being just ruthless. I just didn't think that execution style was, it might be good for a different industry like insurance or banking, which is much more faceless, but this feels much more community orientated. And if you're a bad actor in the community where you're just like shunning community members willy-nilly, whether that's cutting off partners and being like, fuck, I don't care, figure it out, we're not serving you. There's no 3-month grace period, just figure it out. And then they'll lose their whole business. Like things like that happen where payment providers will just cut them off and they've got to figure it out overnight. And so it's like, I just think the net gain for Wire, which was the logo. So thinking about the logo, how do you leave the best taste in people's mouths from their interactions? Now, they might not have worked with Wire directly, but they might have gotten a recommendation from us, whatever it is. But the goal is that we try and leave a good taste in people's mouths that interact with us, whether it's they interact with our team, our customer support, our product, a problem with our product, whatever it is. The goal would be to say, at least that logo was good to me. And a lot of the times that would actually come from recommending other providers beyond ourselves. So someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm in Egypt and I want to do payment processing. Can I use you guys? And we'd be like, look, you could technically, but we're not the best provider for you. These guys would be way better. And so if I go to you and you're like, oh, I went to this company everyone told me to go to, but they pointed me somewhere else, and that company ended up being perfect for you. Now, while we haven't worked together, you're still like, nah, they did the right thing by me. They found me a home here. I'm fucking stoked. And when I've got a purpose for using them, I look forward to using them. again, because if we know we can't do something good for you, like if we know we can't do it, we're not going to try and just bring you on and say, yeah, we'll figure out a way to service Egypt. We'll be like, nah, dude, like we don't want to waste your time. We get it. You're an entrepreneur. You're trying to do this. Here's where we go first stop. Might not be right, but check them out. Here's an intro. That is just such a more successful way to operate than kind of like, oh no, fuck, let's keep our moat. Don't tell them, they might become a competitor. And so from the beginning, even like the Genesis, when we got all our licenses and we were doing all that, the thought process for us was, no one can do all this. This is so expensive and it's going to take years. So our best value add is to give this away and productize it more so. And so a lot of people at the time were like, investors were like, oh, but that's your competitive moat, having all the licenses and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's a competitive moat, but we're trying to make an industry out of this thing. And we can't make an industry if every person, every man and his dog can't start a company. Like if you've got to go and get a license and this and that, you need $10 million in capital just to start, let alone getting a bank account. The bank account wants the licenses because the bank doesn't want to bank you if you don't have the licenses. So it's this circular effect where you're in problems just willy-nilly. But yeah, I think the approach should be more, hey, we're trying to do something for the industry or, humanity, and bonus points if we get to be the ones that are the victor. But if not, I know that we would have left a meaningful contribution on the story overall. Whether we won or lost, personally, it doesn't matter. But did we add value to the purpose of this currency or Bitcoin or industry? And that I think we can look back and say, yes, maybe we didn't get $1 million payout each or whatever, but we can all look back and say we helped over 1 million people buy Bitcoin for the first time. And that's a really powerful metric to be able to say. So it's sort of just a different lens.
Yeah, when I listen to your story, it's almost like you have been rewarded to the extent that you've been rewarded because you've fought for the team ahead of yourself. You've fought for the industry ahead of your team. You've been the ultimate selfless chief executive, and it just sounds like you'd be a really cool dude to work with during a time of uncertainty.
Well, I wonder if the team would say that.
Well, I mean, you have to take some of the roles of a chief executive, which aren't always, you got to be the guy firing the guys who ultimately don't want to be on the other end of that conversation. So it's not all friendly games, but at the same time, you could have been a huge asshole and you would not have been as successful as you were. People would have fled you.
So I think there's time for temperament and like controlling your temperament, but usually if you're going to be overly, and like there were times where I lost my shit, absolutely, of course, like that's a natural thing, but it would always be more the foreign thing, right? Like, because you don't want to lose your shit all the time because that's just not pleasant to be around. But you want to make sure that if you are losing your shit, that people sort of are looking at it like, oh, okay, yeah. He doesn't lose his shit for nothing. There must be something going on here. And I think it adds more weight. But yeah, I think very lucky. Very lucky to dude, so lucky, man. Like, it's like being born at the invention of the wheel, and we get to help sell wheels. Like, it's pretty cool. And like, yeah, I just think that's really cool. So no matter how you slice it, win, lose, or draw, I got 10 years experience I got to accumulate 10 years of experience on the ground floor of the whole industry. It's like being the Man United coach for the under 10 development squad. You're like, oh yeah, I remember Ronaldo when he was in the under 10s at Man United in the trial team. Look how he's grown up. Like seeing a couple of companies that used to be on our books, like that were a customer of ours, they've IPO'd. And so it's like, oh my God, I remember when there was like a team of 5 and they were like, oh, we're trying to figure out how to, and now they're like ringing the bell at NASDAQ or whatever it is, like, it's like, that's cool. You're like, yeah, you're not there doing it, but you're like, I know whether good or bad, I've like contributed to this becoming a thing. And that's pretty cool. I reckon.
That's awesome. So what's next for you? What's next for the industry? What excites you every day?
Oh, dude. Now? Okay. So what excites me heaps at the moment is like all this stuff. When you build an exchange, everything comes down to security. Like nothing can go further if it's not secure. So anything that exists tomorrow is because it was secured today. And so you kind of get in your head about security and you're like, well, what's going on with security? And so for me, I've actually found heaps of enjoyment just looking at numbers, studying numbers and maths at the moment. And like, just more like, I want to know these things because everything is built on them. And like, this better be fucking rock solid. Like, I'm really kind of like, checking under the hood, looking under the tires. Like, I want to know what numbers do and are and how they can sort of, is there any gaps in the numbers? Because we're building everything on it. We've got weapons that are controlled by cryptography. We've got every piece of the internet controlled by cryptography. Cryptography is controlled by numbers. So I'm like, I want to make sure they're good. And between doing that, I sort of stepped away as CEO and I was like, oh, this is one thing people don't really think about, but I definitely thought about it was, everyone's like, oh, CEO, and you want to be a CEO, or you're trying to be a CEO, something like that. And it's like, when I finished, I was like, I'm standing there like, you're not the CEO anymore. You're not on the board. And you're sort of like, well, what am I? And it's like, well, you're the CEO of your body still. Like, why don't you take some attention to that? You've fucking dismissed this dude for like 30 years. So I'm like, yeah, all right, that's a good call. And I've got time on my hands. And so, between doing like contract work or advising companies or, my own personal passion with like maths and numbers, then it's like, well, great, let's fucking start training, bro. And so I became the CEO of my body, and 4 years now. But I was focusing on things like mental health, because obviously when you're burning the candle at both ends, in Silicon Valley and, the industry doesn't sleep, you need to sort of recalibrate to a more normal sort of scenario. So I got a gym membership and a trainer, and I started doing all that 4 times a week. I got basically walked everywhere. So I traded in driving for walking. Doesn't matter. It would force me to walk places, which forces me to get my steps and my headspace good. But also, it actually forced me to be more organized, because now if you can drive everywhere in 15 minutes or whatever, you can always get somewhere. But it's like, no, if you walk somewhere, you can only fit a certain amount of things in your day. So you can't fit as many meetings in your day, which unclutters it doesn't unclutter your life. It naturally organizes your life, because you're like, oh, I'm 45. Because when you walk everywhere, you got to plan to get there on time. So you got to know your routes if you're walking. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And then obviously the next thing was like physical endurance. Like, so, okay, if I'm the CEO of my body, then what is this machine capable of? Like, how big can I go? Like, I don't know. Can I do a triathlon? And so I was like, all right, you know what? What's the hardest thing that you can do physically? And I landed on Ironman. I thought that was one of the most aggressive tests of endurance that I could find. That's obviously, they've got the 6-day fucking running through the desert and stuff, sure. But I mean more like a realistic one that's very testing and going to grow everything internally. It's going to grow my discipline, it's going to grow my skill set, and it's going to grow my health, all with a goal. So that was my North Star, do an Ironman. And for my company's North Star, which is me, the CEO, it was to complete an Ironman. And that's what you do,
There it
brother.
is.
But
There it
yeah, I've got a
is.
whole thing. Look at this. All these are all different events, and the medals from them leading up to, and there's Bitcoin, leading up to the Ironman, because obviously you don't start at an Ironman. You do, you do a swim, you do a run, and then you do like, a half Ironman or a smaller triathlon. You kind of build up to it, just brick by brick though. And, you just got to be patient, but definitely that's been part of the journey. And so another thing I did was like, okay, I wanted to walk I was saying I was doing the walking. So one of the things was like, okay, well, can I walk 21 million steps in a Bitcoin halving cycle? So there's 210,000 blocks in a Bitcoin halving cycle. That means that I need to walk 100 steps for every block over 4 years, which is roughly, that's 10 steps it's 100 steps per block, which is 100 steps for every 10 minutes. So like, roughly. So it works out at 14.5 or 15,000 a day, every day for 4 years. So if you miss a day, you've got to obviously catch up. But anyway, that was 4 years. And yeah, I did 21 million steps, or 21 million
Nice.
and 12 actually, at like 8 o'clock at the final day. And so But that was good because that was sort of a long-term 4-year goal that it's not people hear it and they're like, oh, 20 minutes, that sounds like, oh, it's only 14,000 a day. That's doable. But there's days when you're on a bus. There's days when you're catching
Right.
a train or on a plane, or you've got to do cycling all day. So if you miss a day, that's 28,000 steps tomorrow. Like, are you going to get that done? And so it can get out of hand really quickly, but you can basically do it. And I did that. And the goal was to basically use that as a way for me, my future self, to look back and be like, that's the partition. Like, that's where you changed gears in life. Not for better or worse. That was just the divider, the bookshelf, the sort of the bookend to that chapter of working and living in Silicon Valley. And, from the age of, 27 to 35, or 27 to 35, give or take, those years, or 27 to 36. And that was it. And, you punch it really hard. And the idea is like, okay, well, can I help give myself a foundation in my professional career that can grant me enough time to work on my health? Because health is just like, and I get it. Like, I'm the Red Bull dude, I'm 3 days straight, just like grinding out. I love it. But I will say that there's no way, I guarantee you, that you are running on top performance. Not even close. No. That's a guarantee. And unfortunately, the only way to figure that out is to see the other side. And I'm still not there, but I know that walking, saunas, ice baths, just taking care of yourself. Like, people don't get it. People wake up in the morning, get dressed, look $1 million, blah, 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 buy kids, buy wife, buy dog. They go to work to sit somewhere, dressed like $1 million all day, to work for someone else on someone else's thing. And then they come home to their family like, biggest day ever. Oh, no, I can't play catch. You come back as like the fucking used version of yourself. It's like, we should be showing up for our loved ones that are dedicated every day to us like that. We should go into work looking like shit and then come home looking like $1 million for our family. The tables are all wrong. And so in my head, I was like, look at all the energy I'm putting into other stuff. It's like, bro, your car, like, fix your car. If you're going for drives, and I mean, I'm the car. It's like, let's make this thing a bit better. And so it's not perfect, but it's definitely like been a great investment. So another thing I'm doing is like stretching. So I'm really inflexible in my hamstrings. So I go to a stretch class because I'm like, if I'm in 10 years time, when I'm like, 45 or whatever it is, it's going to be like, for 10 years time, I'll be, 49. I'll be 50. Fuck. Oh my God. Okay. But that dude's not going to go lift weights, or he might, but it's going to be much different for him. So I thought that if he's going to struggle running and lifting weights more, then stretching is going to be a great way for him to stay strong and limber and shit like that. And so now I'm like, well, sweet, let's get that ball ache out of the way now. So I go to stretch class to try and figure that out so that 50-year-old me doesn't feel like it's foreign. They feel like it's like, yeah, dude, we're flexible, we're limber. Because 10 years ago, you made the investment to be flexible and limber. And so that's kind of just like trying to do favors for future me.
That's amazing, Michael. I think everything that you're doing is, whether you realize it or not, is done with such amazing foresight. And I hope our listening audience has gotten as much as I've gotten from listening to you. For those who want to learn more from you, for those who want to learn by osmosis as much as they can from you, how should they keep in touch with you? How should they learn more? How can they soak up more Michael Dunworth in their life?
Oh, dude. Follow me on Twitter. I've got a Twitter handle, Michael Dunworth 1. And on GitHub, it's Mike D123. I don't put out videos or blogs yet, but my friends are wanting me to do it. So I bought a camera. I'll probably get onto that. But other than that, dude, no, I just talk to people like you and just get to shoot the shit. And I really enjoy it. I appreciate you having the chat, by the way. This is awesome.
Yeah, this was great. Well, we'll have to do a round two because I want to figure out what we can do to get
you
in the United States. We need more.
And then I want to get some recipes from you for some mad food.
We can do that too. We can definitely do that too. Well, until next time, thank you very much.
Awesome.